Taxco, an ancient city with cobblestone streets, once witnessed a love as beautiful as a painting. A talented young woman met a mature man, they fell in love, got married, and had children. Everything seemed perfect. But behind the silent walls, a completely different story was unfolding. Magdalena Aguilar Romero was born in 1990 in Guerrero State, Mexico, into a humble but loving family in the town of Taxco. Her father was Juan Diego Aguilar Zamora, a miner, a profession that had been very common and important in Taxco for generations. Her mother, Maria de Los Angeles Romero, was a gentlewoman who devoted all her love to caring for and raising Magdalena, along with her two other sons, Saul and Raul. From childhood, Magdalena harbored big dreams. She wanted to become a professional, not only to have a good life for herself, but also to help her family. This dream accompanied her through each year of school. After finishing high school, she chose to study nutrition because she wanted to help people with health and dietary problems. Friends remembered Magdalena as a cheerful girl who always smiled brightly and was ready to encourage and comfort others when they faced difficulties. In 2011, when 21-year-old Magdalena was diligently studying at university, she met Cesar Gomez Arciniega, a 35-year-old man. This meeting would completely change her life in ways no one could have imagined. The romance between Magdalena and Cesar began beautifully, like fairy tale love stories. Although Cesar was 14 years older than her, they quickly fell deeply in love. After just 6 months of dating, Magdalena discovered she was pregnant. Both were overjoyed with this news, considering it a wonderful gift from heaven. They decided to marry immediately and start building a small family. But life isn't always as dreamy as it seems. The happiest moments are often the beginning of hardships. When their first child was born, Magdalena was forced to temporarily pause her nutrition studies to care for the baby full-time. Nutrition textbooks were put away in the closet, replaced by nights of waking up to breastfeed, change diapers, and handle all household chores. Daily life became stressful and exhausting, leaving the young woman feeling overwhelmed by challenges she had never faced before. Later, joy in the family increased when their second child was born. Magdalena loved her children immensely and felt happy being a mother. However, deep in her heart, she couldn't help but think about her childhood dreams that were gradually fading away. Every time she saw her children smile, she realized that her life was taking a different direction from what she had once dreamed of. Seeing his daughter disappointed about not being able to pursue her dreams, Magdalena's father decided to help her continue her studies. Thanks to encouragement and support from her family, Magdalena had the opportunity to return to university to study nutrition, something she had longed for. Her eyes lit up again with joy and hope. However, Magdalena didn't expect that this right decision would cause major difficulties in her marriage. Cesar, the husband who had previously been very good to her, suddenly changed completely. He was no longer gentle as before, but became jealous, possessive, and controlling of everything his wife did. Day by day, Cesar controlled Magdalena more and more tightly. He wouldn't let her wear makeup, even choosing every outfit she was allowed to wear. Magdalena had to ask permission wherever she wanted to go, and all her dreams were hindered by his words that sounded good, but were actually very harmful. "You just need to focus on me and the children, nothing else." For Cesar, his wife going to school was like a threat that he had to prevent by any means. Over time, Cesar gradually isolated Magdalena from everyone around her. He prevented her from seeing family and friends, making her world increasingly narrow. Eventually, Magdalena, once an independent and strong girl, had become completely dependent on Cesar, living under his strict control. Gradually, family gatherings became distant memories for Magdalena. She was continuously absent from warm Christmas celebrations and birthday parties filled with laughter, always having seemingly reasonable excuses. "I'm a bit tired, too busy taking care of the children, next time." But the perceptive eyes of relatives couldn't help but notice the concerning changes. Magdalena was withering day by day like a flower lacking water. Her once glossy hair now drooped, her once rosy skin now pale. Her once sparkling eyes were now dim. The radiant smile of years past disappeared, replaced by the weary expression of someone who was exhausted. When family showed concern, Magdalena still tried to hide the truth behind weak affirmations. "Nothing's wrong. I'm very happy with Cesar." But behind the silent walls, the real hell was just beginning to reveal itself. Cesar, with his deep prejudices, had forbidden her from seeing her brother Saul, the gay brother she loved dearly, with the toxic reasoning that he didn't want his children to be negatively influenced. Only Raul, her youngest brother, was still allowed to maintain contact. And it was during those rare times that he sensed Cesar's true nature. The evil look when he looked at Magdalena, the way he controlled every word and gesture of his wife like a strict prison warden. Each day passed in suffocating atmosphere. Magdalena seemed to sink deeper into a swamp of despair. Until 2014, when her endurance was exhausted, she finally found the last ray of courage. With trembling hands, she dialed her father's phone number. Through sobs, she confessed everything: the pain, the fear, and the longing to be freed from this hellish life. Without a second's hesitation, Magdalena's family opened their arms to welcome her, helping her and the children escape from the invisible chains. It was the moment when Magdalena, after years of living in darkness, finally saw the light of freedom. Joy overflowed in Magdalena's family when she finally found her way back home. They felt relieved, as if a burden that had been weighing on their hearts for years had been lifted, because deep down, they had never truly accepted this marriage. The secret worries of past months and years had now been proven justified. Not stopping at seeking protection from family, Magdalena also showed wisdom by seeking help from the Women's Support Center in Taxco. Here, experienced specialists quickly recognized the seriousness of the situation. They classified Magdalena's case as high risk, a red flag warning based on bitter experience that men like Cesar, when rejected, often become unpredictable, dangerous individuals. The center followed proper procedures, forwarding the file to the prosecutor's office and local government women's support agencies. However, authorities didn't act quickly, leaving Magdalena in continuous danger. And as the specialists had warned, Cesar wasn't the type to easily accept failure. He began a reconquest campaign with all sorts of tricks, from sweet promises of change to surprise gifts to pleading phone calls in the middle of the night. But Magdalena, the woman who had once tasted hell, was no longer the naive girl of the past. She was determined to reclaim the life and dreams she had lost during those dark years. Although she wanted to remove him from her life forever, Magdalena couldn't deny one fact. Her two little angels were also his children. The innocent children became invisible strings, binding her to maintain a relationship with the man she most wanted to forget. In 2015, after the divorce procedures were completed, they were forced to sit down together to agree on the children's future. The signed agreement seemed fair on paper. Magdalena would care for the children from Monday to Friday, while Cesar would take the children on weekends. Initially, everything went smoothly as planned. But not long after, Cesar's true nature was revealed again. He began forgetting to send child support money. Every time Magdalena reminded him, he had countless reasons: work difficulties, economic hardship, or simply silent indifference. The child exchange meetings became Cold War battles full of tension. Shouting, implied threats, hostile looks, all happening right in front of the small children. But despite the pain in her heart, despite each meeting with Cesar being like psychological torture, Magdalena persisted in never preventing her children from seeing their father. She understood that although Cesar was a terrible husband, the children still needed their father's love. The 3 years after the divorce became a miraculous healing journey for Magdalena. She learned to love herself, learned to trust in the future, and most importantly, learned to dream again. Life seemed to be opening new doors, promising good things waiting ahead. But while she strived to regain the happiness she had lost due to the violence she had experienced, Cesar's hatred and anger increased over time. Despite Cesar continuously harassing her with late-night calls and implied threatening messages, Magdalena persisted on the path of freedom she had chosen. She found peace again in her family's embrace, fulfilled her dream of becoming a nutrition specialist, and finally got the job she had yearned for since her youth. By 2018, Magdalena, now 28 years old, was not only financially independent, but also radiant with the beauty of a woman who had found herself again. She began taking care of her appearance, enjoying evenings with friends, spending time exercising. Life seemed to be giving her a second chance at happiness. But in the shadows, Cesar couldn't accept that the woman he once controlled was now happy without him. Jealousy and hatred had turned him into a dangerous person, stalking Magdalena's every move. On the morning of January 13th, 2018, like any other ordinary day, Magdalena was preparing to leave home at 8:30 a.m. She gently informed her mother about her plans for the day. She would have a private nutrition consultation at the health center, and in the afternoon she would pick up the children from Cesar's house. Before leaving home that morning, Magdalena and her mother had made a special appointment, 5:30 p.m. at the Taxco Church, where they would attend Mass together in memory of their deceased ancestor. This was a familiar family tradition. Magdalena kissed her mother goodbye lightly, as she had done countless times before, something normal they had done for 28 years. No one thought it would be the last time. Magdalena went to work as usual, counseling patients devotedly, sharing nutritional knowledge with her inherent passion. After work hours, she prepared to pick up the children from Cesar's house as agreed. But at the meeting point, something strange happened. Cesar didn't show up, and the two children were nowhere to be seen. She stood waiting, beginning to feel uneasy. Magdalena called, but only heard the phone ringing endlessly in vain. No one answered. She decided to go straight to Cesar's house to find out. But from that moment on, Magdalena disappeared. No one saw her again. She seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind a terrifying void and unanswered questions. At the church, Maria sat waiting for her daughter in silence. Mass began and ended, but Magdalena still hadn't come. Her hands trembled as she held her phone to text. "Where are you?" "Mom is waiting at the church." No response. No familiar text notification sound. Just chilling silence. Worry surged. She hurried home, hoping her daughter was just late. But subsequent calls only received automated responses. "The subscriber you are trying to reach is currently unavailable." Hour after hour passed. Uneasiness gradually turned into extreme fear. Magdalena's entire family seemed to drown in a fierce wave of worry when intuition told them that something very terrible had happened. During the long, sleepless night, Maria's mind was like a machine constantly thinking of possibilities to explain her daughter's unusual disappearance. Perhaps Magdalena had met friends for coffee and her phone battery died. But this thought was quickly dismissed. Her daughter was always careful, always carrying a backup charger in her purse. Or maybe she had taken the children for a walk downtown, to places with weak phone signals. This sounded more reasonable, but still wasn't convincing enough. And then another possibility appeared in her mind. Could Magdalena have agreed to get back together with Cesar, the man who never stopped begging her to return? The next morning there were still no messages, no phone calls, no signs that Magdalena had come home. Worry had now turned into real panic. Maria decided to go straight to Cesar's house to find out the truth. When she appeared at the door, Cesar and his mother, Sylvia, received her with suspiciously calm expressions. They confirmed that Magdalena had indeed come there, but according to their story, she had left around 10 p.m. to meet some friend. Due to this sudden appointment, she had decided not to take the children with her. The story sounded reasonable, but Maria didn't believe it. She knew her daughter too well. Magdalena would never go anywhere without prior notice, especially could never leave the children to meet friends in the evening. And then she noticed clear scratches on Cesar's face, as if he had just been through some kind of struggle. Without hesitation, Maria decided to go to the police station to officially report her daughter missing. The battle for justice for Magdalena began here. But the authorities' reaction left Maria utterly disappointed. Instead of the concern and quick action she expected, she only received indifferent looks and empty promises. Go home. Maybe your daughter is out having fun somewhere. Young women, you know, maybe she's having fun with a new boyfriend. Such responses made the mother's heart feel like it was being cut by knives. Faced with the system's indifference, Magdalena's family and friends decided to search for the missing girl themselves. Images of Magdalena with her radiant smile began flooding throughout Taxco City like a search wave. White posters with her familiar face were pasted on every wall, from small shops to street lamp posts. The word missing, printed boldly in red, stood out against the white background, along with the family's contact phone number. On social media, thousands of people shared Magdalena's image, hoping that someone, somewhere in the city, had seen her. Volunteers divided into many groups, each group responsible for a different area of the city. They went street by street, knocked on every house door, asked every citizen. But the answer was always no, or just regretful headshakes. It seemed Magdalena had completely vanished from this world. Every clue led to a dead end. Every hope shattered in the city's terrifying silence. Day after day, Maria became a familiar figure at the prosecutor's office. She went there every morning with the same message. Please investigate Cesar. I'm sure he harmed my daughter. Her eyes were red from staying up all night, her voice trembling with emotion. But the officials only looked at her with pitying eyes and made empty promises. We'll look into it. Go home. Then Magdalena's file was buried again in endless piles of paperwork. The authorities' indifference was like a slap in the face of the suffering family. They realized that without fighting themselves, Magdalena would become a cold statistic in the list of missing women that no one cared about. The family decided they had to do something bigger to attract attention. They organized silent marches through Taxco's streets. Hundreds of people, from family and friends to strangers with compassionate hearts, walked together in silence. They carried signs with Magdalena's image and simple but moving messages. Justice for Magdalena. Find our daughter. These protests were not just the voice of one family, but also the cry for help from the entire women's community. They understood that if Magdalena could disappear without anyone caring, then any other woman could face the same fate. This wasn't just a fight for one individual, but a fight for everyone. Then on Saturday, January 20th, when hope had almost died out, an unexpected ray of light appeared. The phone in Maria's house rang. A strange voice, seemingly deliberately hiding identity, said briefly, Magdalena is at Cesar's house. Then the line went dead. This news was like a small bomb exploding in the mother's mind. On one hand, she felt relieved that her daughter might still be alive. But on the other hand, fear increased exponentially. Why would Magdalena be at Cesar's house? Why hadn't she contacted her family? And why did someone have to hide their name to provide this information? The most suspicious thing throughout Magdalena's disappearance was Cesar's attitude. While the entire city was worried and searching, while her family was suffering to the point of despair, he was living his normal life in a frightening way. He still opened his food shop on time, still served customers, still went to the market to buy food as usual. When marches demanding justice took place right in front of him, he just stood watching with an emotionless expression, as if all of this had nothing to do with him. This cold and indifferent attitude from Cesar in the face of his ex-wife's and her family's pain made many people even more suspicious. They wondered, how could a normal man be so calm when the mother of his children was missing? This abnormal calmness wasn't a sign of innocence, but seemed like hiding something dark. Faced with the wave of outrage from the community and continuous pressure from protests, authorities finally couldn't sit still anymore. They were forced to act, but precious time had already passed too long. After 9 long days filled with worry and despair, January 22nd would bring a discovery that would make the entire city of Taxco shudder in horror. That morning, with suspicions increasingly focused on Cesar, and after receiving the mysterious tip, the police team decided to search his food shop. They prepared mentally for a routine investigation, hoping to find clues about Magdalena's whereabouts. But what they discovered inside that small room exceeded their most horrifying imagination. Before the investigators' eyes was a scene from hell. On a 3-burner gas stove, a white enameled pot contained what remained of Magdalena's arms and legs. All had been cooked. The heavy stench rising made even experienced police officers vomit. On the cold floor, a black plastic bag contained the pelvic bones of the young woman, and in the refrigerator, where fresh food for customers was usually stored, they found the rest of Magdalena's body preserved cold, as if it were just ordinary pieces of meat. This horrifying scene shocked the police officers, people who had witnessed many crimes in their careers. They realized this wasn't just an ordinary murder, but a brutal act that exceeded all limits of humanity. With trembling hands, an investigator called Maria. He had to prepare the gentlest words possible for this devastating news. Prepare yourself mentally. We found Magdalena at Cesar's house, but the remaining words seemed to choke in his throat. Maria, although she had prepared mentally for bad news, still couldn't imagine such cruelty. With her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, she rushed to the scene. When she saw what remained of her daughter, a heartbreaking scream rang out, tearing through the room's silent atmosphere. Identifying Magdalena's body became the ultimate pain a mother could endure. Her remains were transferred to the Forensic Institute, where experts determined the cause of death. Magdalena had died from suffocation before being dismembered and cooked. This meant she had endured ultimate fear in her final minutes, knowing she was about to die at the hands of someone she had once trusted most. News of this horrifying discovery quickly spread throughout Mexico, making the entire country shudder at unimaginable brutality. The Guerrero State Attorney General was forced to hold an emergency press conference to inform about the case that had shocked public opinion. In the press conference held before hundreds of journalists and citizens, the Attorney General with a serious expression announced the horrifying details of the case. He affirmed that this wasn't just an ordinary murder, but an especially serious crime that needed to be handled according to its brutal nature. From evidence collected at the scene, investigators quickly identified Cesar Gomez Arciniega as the main suspect. However, what worried them most was the assessment that one man couldn't have carried out this entire brutal act alone. Dismembering a human body required strength, time, and perhaps experience that one person would find difficult to accomplish. This information made public opinion even more outraged when they realized that not just one, but possibly several people had participated in ending Magdalena's life in such a savage way. When the horrifying details of the case were widely publicized, the entire state of Guerrero trembled as if struck by lightning on a clear day. Not just Magdalena's family, but the entire society felt deeply wounded by this unbelievable brutality. This wasn't just the death of a young woman, but a painful awakening to a cruel reality existing right in the heart of the community. The public's reaction was immediate and powerful. Social organizations, feminist groups, and thousands of ordinary citizens united in shared pain. They organized large-scale protests unprecedented in Taxco's history. Protests that not only demanded justice for Magdalena, but also served as a wake-up call to society. This was a battle not just for one individual, but for all women living in fear of gender-based violence. Among the protesting crowd, Maria de Los Angeles' voice rang out full of emotion and determination. I demand justice because he can't just get away with this. He must pay for all the suffering we're going through, our family. These words weren't just the cry of a mother who lost her child, but also the voice representing countless other families enduring similar pain. Faced with enormous pressure from public opinion and continuous protests, authorities finally couldn't delay any longer. They were forced to act with the speed they had deliberately avoided since the early days of Magdalena's disappearance. Arrest warrants were issued immediately for Cesar and his mother Sylvia, those identified as the main perpetrators in this horrific crime. But the delay in investigation had created an opportunity for Cesar to flee. When police came to arrest them, they only found Sylvia. Cesar had vanished without a trace. The main culprit's escape from the law's grasp made the community even more outraged. But the most cruel thing wasn't Cesar's flight. During the investigation, when psychological experts interviewed Magdalena and Cesar's two young children, another horrifying truth was revealed. The two children, one 6 years old and one 4 years old, had witnessed their father and grandmother murder their mother. These innocent children not only lost their beloved mother, but also carried in their memories the most horrifying images any human being could witness. The revelation of this detail poured more fuel on the community's fire of outrage. Taxco residents took to the streets once again, this time with even greater anger, demanding the harshest possible punishment for those who not only murdered an innocent woman, but also left unhealable psychological wounds on the victim's children. To show their determination to capture Cesar, the prosecutor's office offered a huge reward, 500,000 Mexican pesos, approximately 25,000 USD. This was a large sum for a small community like Taxco, showing the seriousness authorities placed on this case. Wanted notices were posted everywhere, from shops to public places, hoping someone would recognize the killer's face. However, despite the attractive reward and continuous efforts by law enforcement, Cesar seemed to evaporate from the earth. Years passed in disappointment and despair, while the main culprit remained free from the law's grasp. During Cesar's time in hiding, feminist groups, family, and friends of Magdalena continuously organized protests, memorial services, and campaigns to raise awareness about gender-based violence. Each protest not only demanded justice for the young woman, but also called for changes to the entire culture and legal system to protect women. Meanwhile, Sylvia, the mother who helped her son commit the horrific crime, had to face the consequences of her actions. On December 6, 2019, after a tense trial, the judge sentenced her to 40 years in prison for complicity in murder and concealing the crime. Additionally, she was required to pay damages to Magdalena's family. With Cesar still at large, Mexican authorities had to seek international assistance. An international arrest warrant was issued through Interpol, expanding the search scope worldwide. 3 years passed in waiting and fragile hope. Magdalena's family, although they had seen Sylvia convicted, still couldn't have complete peace while their daughter's killer remained outside the law's reach. Then finally, on July 9, 2022, in the border city of Tijuana, a group of tourist police on routine patrol discovered a man drinking on the street. But when checking his documents, this man provided false identification with the name Maximo Herrera Garcia. Police suspicion led to bringing him to the station for more thorough verification. Cesar had tried to hide his true identity, perhaps hoping that after 3 years people had forgotten his crime. But modern identification systems and cooperation between agencies quickly determined his real identity. When they learned that the perpetrator of one of Mexico's most horrific crimes was sitting in the interrogation room, the police felt both relieved and outraged. Through interagency cooperation systems, Cesar was transferred to Guerrero State to face charges. Finally, after 3 years of running, Cesar would have to face the consequences of the brutal actions he had committed. Although arrested, Magdalena's family's worries weren't over. Time passed, and despite expecting an exemplary sentence from authorities, Cesar's trial dragged on due to continuous postponements because of his requests to change lawyers. November 28, 2023, marked the moment when justice was finally served. The Guerrero State Prosecutor's Office successfully convicted Cesar Gomez Arcaniega, 41, with a sentence of 55 years in prison for murder. The court also ordered him to pay damages to the victim's family. When hearing the sentence read, Magdalena's family felt profound relief. After nearly 6 years of tireless struggle, finally both perpetrators, Cesar and his mother Sylvia, had received punishment fitting the horrific crime they had committed. This wasn't just a victory for one family, but also a strong signal in the fight against gender-based violence in Mexico. And that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along, and we'll see you in the next videos.